What is a Swood? What does it do? And why would you want one? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Welcome back, Pathless Peddlers, and if you're new to the channel, we are all about the non-competitive side of cycling and also quirky, obscure bike parts such as this one. So if you're into that, hit that subscribe button. So I know what you're thinking, is it a pipe? No, this is not a pipe. Quick disclaimer, this was sent into the channel for review. This bent metal thing is made by Swood, based out of Richmond, Virginia, and it's actually a bag standoff and support. Pretty interesting and elegant design, and it does its function really, really well. On Steven's site, this is the Twisted T bag rack. There is a non-twisted version where it is just two perpendicular pieces of tubing. Why you'd want to choose this over the other, I'll get into a little bit later. The design for this rack, if you want to call it that, was actually originally created by Hessen Labs based in the UK, but because of distribution or shipping or what have you, Hessen does have an agreement with Swood in Richmond, Virginia to make these for the US market. So what problem does this thing solve exactly? Well, if you're like me, you're probably a big fan of these Paradise style bags run on the front, and you know it's got some quirks. The hardware isn't very sophisticated, usually just belay straps and foam. One of the big challenges with bags like this is to keep it off the head tube. Typically there's some kind of cordage with more foam spacers, and that generally keeps it off the head tube, but as you turn, it slowly eats and abrades your bike. Another challenge with these bags, especially if you ride smaller bikes like myself, or if you don't have very much handlebar to tire clearance, is you know that these can get kind of droopy over time. So what the Twisted T and T-bar rack does is that, one, it functions as a standoff for a place for the bag to rest without touching your head tube, and it turns with the steerer tube. It won't abrade your head tube. The second thing it does is that it also functions as a bag support. Many of these bags either have a row of MOLLE webbing down the middle or a pair on the side, and this crossbeam loops through the MOLLE straps and acts as a support. This is where the Twisted T versus T-bar discussion takes place. If you have a bag, this is a Bags by Bird bag, it has the MOLLE straps down the center, then you would want to use the Twisted T so this little kink can get into that center row of straps. If you have a different bag, I think the Swift Industry bags or the Fabs Chess, they have two rows of MOLLE webbing and they're off to the side. That's when you would get the T-bar version, because then you could slip either end into the two rows of straps. Couple more details, there are two versions, one with a binder bolt and one without. Steven recommends, if you're going to use this with a carbon sear, to get the one with the binder bolt. In terms of actually installing this on your bike, this is the equivalent of a 20 mil spacer. So hopefully you have that much spacer beneath your stem. And you would slip this over your steerer tube, put your stem on, whatever other spacers you have, compress everything down first, then tighten this, then tighten your stem. One other nice detail is these edges here are chamfered so as not to bite into your steer tube. I have found, however, that if you can run a thin spacer below this, that helps this from potentially digging into the top of your headset. I know that happened on my personal bike, so I'd recommend running just like a really thin spacer there, so it's compressing the spacer, then your headset, rather than this potentially digging into your headset and getting stuck. This rack does have a stated capacity of 12 pounds. And talking to Steven, that's on the kind of conservative side. You know, depending on how rowdy you get with your bike, you would probably want to run less, but generally speaking, at least 12 pounds on paved roads or gravel roads. It doesn't sound like a lot, but I typically try not to run more than 8 pounds on my front bag anyway, so it falls well within the limits. So how does it work? Well, I've run it on 2 bikes using a variety of bags, and it works awesome, just as advertised. It keeps a handlebar bag from touching the bike and abrading the bike, but also made everything really, really rigid. It also supported my Bags by Bird bag really well so that it wouldn't rub over the front tire, even when I had, you know, a good amount of load in there and things got bumpy. So 100% works as advertised for this Paradise style bags. Another bonus is I actually tried this with the Rocky Mountain Toast Rackless Rando bag, and although this didn't fit into a slot on that bag, it still worked great as a standoff. I actually tied the bit of cordage around this, and it made the bag really rigid, didn't flop around at all, and of course it wasn't abrading the head tube. So these cost anywhere between $60 to $70, and you have to provide some information to Steven, such as the stem length that you're going to run this on, the approximate angle of the stem, and whether you want the twisted T or the T-bar. And I know 60 to 70 bucks is going to sound like a lot, but he makes these one by one by hand in Richmond, Virginia. So I think to have a custom built kind of modern rack, if you will, for that price is actually pretty good. Now, is this an absolutely essential thing that you must buy if you're running, a Caradice bag on the front? Of course not. If you can live with the elastic cordage and foam blocks and don't mind your head tube being slowly eaten away, then no, you don't need it. However, if you do want to protect the head tube of your bike, or if you ride a smaller bike and have an issue with the bag occasionally touching your tire, then this will go a long way in making the bag more stable in the front and keeping it off the front wheel. If you can swing it, and if you think you need it, I highly recommend it. If you guys have any other questions about the Swood, Steven Wood, Twisted T rack, not rack thing, leave those in the comments below, but let me know what you guys think of this pretty cool and interesting niche bike product. And if you like the fact that we focus on interesting parts, not just the mainstream bike parts, if you will, then consider supporting the channel on Patreon. That's how we keep the lights on, make these videos happening. Or stop by a sticker shop, pick up some stickers and patches, all that good stuff. As always, keep the self side down.